The pale autumn moon hung low over the sleepy town of Haverbrook, its wan light barely penetrating the thick fog that had rolled in from the nearby hills. Hannah Reeve stood at her bedroom window, gazing out at the misty streets below. The town, usually so familiar and comforting, seemed alien and foreboding tonight. She had returned to Haverbrook just a few months ago after years of chasing her dreams in the big city. Those dreams had crumbled to dust, leaving her with nothing but a suitcase full of regrets and a desperate need for the familiar. But as she stood there, watching the fog twist and curl around the street lamps, she felt a strange unease settle over her. A sudden gust of wind rattled the window pane, carrying with it the faintest hint of a sound. Hannah leaned closer, straining her ears. It was distant and ephemeral, like a half-remembered dream, but unmistakable, the tinkling notes of a calliope. Her breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be. The stories she had heard as a child came rushing back, whispered tales of the Midnight Carnival that had vanished without a trace decades ago. But those were just stories, weren't they? Unable to shake the eerie feeling, Hannah grabbed her coat and headed out into the night. The streets were deserted, the fog muffling her footsteps as she made her way towards the outskirts of town. The music grew louder with each step, a siren song that both thrilled and terrified her. As she crested the hill overlooking Farley's field, Hannah's heart nearly stopped. There, where yesterday there had been nothing but an empty expanse of grass, now stood a massive carnival. Tents of faded red and gold stretched towards the sky, their pennants fluttering in a breeze she couldn't feel. A Ferris wheel loomed above it all, its skeletal frame creaking softly as it turned, seemingly of its own accord. Hannah rubbed her eyes, certain she must be dreaming. But when she looked again, the carnival was still there, its lights flickering weakly in the gloom. It was both alluring and unsettling, a relic from another time that had no business existing in the here and now. She should have turned back then. She should have run home, locked the doors, and waited for morning to prove it had all been a bizarre hallucination. But curiosity, that most human of traits, propelled her forward. One step, then another, until she found herself standing before the carnival's main entrance. An arch of tarnished metal spanned the gateway, spelling out Midnight Carnival in letters that might once have glowed with electric brilliance. Now they were dull and lifeless, like the eyes of a corpse. Hannah reached out a trembling hand to touch the cool metal, and as her fingers made contact, a shock ran through her body. The carnival came to life. Lights blazed forth from every booth and ride, nearly blinding her with their sudden brilliance. The calliope music swelled, no longer distant, but immediate and overwhelming. And there, just beyond the entrance, stood a figure. He was tall and gaunt, dressed in a threadbare ringmaster's costume that might once have been magnificent. His face was hidden in the shadow cast by his top hat, but Hannah could feel his gaze upon her, intense and hungry. "Welcome, my dear," he said, his voice carrying easily over the cacophony of the carnival. "We've been waiting for you." Hannah wanted to run, to scream, to do anything but step forward, yet her feet moved of their own accord, carrying her past the threshold and into the carnival proper. As she passed the ringmaster, she caught a glimpse of his face. Pale, almost translucent skin stretched tight over sharp cheekbones, and eyes that glowed with an unearthly light. "The show is about to begin," he whispered, and Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. The carnival spread out before her, a maze of tents and attractions that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. Everywhere she turned, she saw pale, gaunt figures moving in the shadows. Clowns with painted smiles that never reached their eyes. Acrobats that bent at impossible angles. Fortune-tellers whose blind eyes seemed to follow her every move. Hannah wandered in a daze, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. She passed a merry-go-round where the carved horses seemed to snort and paw at the air, their wooden eyes rolling in fear or excitement. A house of mirrors reflected versions of herself that were subtly wrong, older, younger, twisted and changed in ways she couldn't quite define. And always there was the music. It wormed its way into her brain, making it hard to think, hard to remember why she had come or how to leave. She found herself swaying to its rhythm, her feet carrying her deeper into the heart of the carnival. As she passed a brightly colored booth, a voice called out to her, "Step right up, young lady, test your luck, win a prize." Hannah turned to see a wizened old man, his skin as wrinkled and gray as ancient parchment. He grinned at her, revealing a mouth full of sharp, yellowed teeth. "All it takes is one throw," he cajoled, holding out a set of rings. "Land one on a bottle, and who knows what wonders you might win." She knew she shouldn't. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run, but the music dulled her fears and the carnival's strange magic tugged at her curiosity. Hannah reached out and took a ring. It was heavier than it looked and cold, so cold it nearly burned her skin. She hefted it, aimed, and tossed it towards the pyramid of bottles. As it left her hand, she could have sworn she saw it gleam with an inner light. The ring sailed through the air, spinning end over end. Time seemed to slow as Hannah watched its arc, her heart pounding in her chest. It descended towards the bottles, and for a moment, she was certain it would miss. Then, with a sound like a bell being struck, the ring settled around the neck of the centermost bottle. The old man's grin widened impossibly. "A winner!" he cackled. "Oh my, what a lucky girl you are." Hannah felt no sense of victory, only a growing dread. What did I win?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The old man reached beneath the counter and produced a small, ornate box. It was made of dark wood, inlaid with silver that formed intricate, twisting patterns across its surface. "A treasure beyond compare," he said, holding it out to her. "Go on, take it. It's yours now." With trembling hands, Hannah accepted the box. It was surprisingly heavy, and she could feel something shifting inside as she moved it. A faint whisper seemed to emanate from within, words just on the edge of comprehension. "Open it," the old man urged, his eyes glinting with an emotion Hannah couldn't name. "See what fate has in store for you." Hannah's fingers traced the outline of the box, seeking the catch that would open it. She found it, a small silver clasp that seemed to warm at her touch. Everything in her screamed not to open it, to throw it away and run as fast and as far as she could. But the music of the carnival swelled around her, drowning out her fears. With a soft click, the clasp released and the lid of the box began to open of its own accord. A brilliant light spilled out, temporarily blinding Hannah. When her vision cleared, she found herself no longer standing at the game booth, but in the center of a vast, circular tent. The carnival surrounded her on all sides, its denizens watching her with hungry, glowing eyes. And there, before her, stood the Ringmaster. He spread his arms wide, his coat spreading like wings. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice echoing in the sudden silence, "our newest performer has arrived." The tent erupted in applause, the sound building to a deafening roar. Hannah tried to back away, but found her feet rooted to the spot. The box slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering to the ground. "Don't be shy, my dear," the Ringmaster said, stepping towards her. "You've won your place among us. The show must go on after all." As he reached for her, Hannah found her voice at last. She screamed, the sound tearing from her throat and drowning out even the carnival's relentless music. But there was no one to hear her, no one to help. The performers closed in, their pale hands reaching for her, pulling her into their eternal dance. The last thing Hannah saw before the world went dark was the Ringmaster's face, his lips pulled back in a triumphant smile. "Welcome," he whispered, "to the Midnight Carnival." Miles away in the quiet town of Haverbrook, a young boy was jolted awake by a distant sound. He went to his window and looked out, his eyes widening as he saw a strange glow on the horizon. For just a moment, he thought he could make out the silhouette of a Ferris wheel against the night sky. Then in the blink of an eye, it was gone. The boy rubbed his eyes, convinced he must have been dreaming. But as he climbed back into bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that a door had been opened that was never meant to be unlocked. In the shadows of Haverbrook, something stirred. The Midnight Carnival had returned, and it was hungry for new souls to join its eternal performance. The sun rose over Haverbrook, its warm light dispelling the mists of night. But for 5 of the town's residents, the new day brought no comfort. They stood at the edge of Farley's Field, staring in disbelief at the sprawling carnival before them. "I told you it was real," whispered Tommy Jensen, the boy who had seen the carnival from his window the night before. His eyes were wide with a mix of fear and excitement. Beside him stood Sheriff Mac Holbrook, His weathered face creased with concern. "I've been patrolling these streets for 30 years, he muttered, "and I've never seen anything like this." The other three, Dr. Elena Patel, local historian Arthur Blackwood, and Hannah's childhood friend Sarah Loomis, remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts as they gazed upon the impossible sight before them. The Midnight Carnival stood silent in the morning light, its tents and attractions motionless. But there was an undeniable sense of watchfulness about the place, as if it were merely waiting for the right moment to spring to life. "We have to go in," Sarah said suddenly, her voice tight with worry. "Hannah's in there, I know it." The others turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Sheriff Holbrook asked. Sarah swallowed hard. "I went to her house this morning. She wasn't there, but her coat was gone and there were muddy footprints leading out the door. She must have come here last night." Dr. Patel frowned. "But why would she—" "The stories," Arthur Blackwood interrupted, his eyes never leaving the carnival. "You're all too young to remember, but I do. The Midnight Carnival came to Haverbrook once before, decades ago. It stayed for a week, and when it left—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "When it left what?" Tommy asked, his young voice trembling slightly. Blackwood turned to face them, his eyes haunted. "When it left, a dozen people had vanished without a trace. My sister was one of them." A heavy silence fell over the group. The carnival loomed before them, its secrets hidden behind colorful facades and silent attractions. "We can't just stand here," Sarah said at last. "Hannah's in there, we have to find her." Sheriff Holbrook nodded grimly. "Agreed, but we stick together, understand? No one wanders off alone." With slow, cautious steps, the group approached the entrance to the Midnight Carnival. The arch that had blazed with light the night before now stood dark and forbidding. As they passed beneath it, each felt a chill run down their spine, as if they had crossed some invisible threshold. The carnival stretched out before them, a labyrinth of tents and booths. Everything was still and silent, yet there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air, as if the entire place were holding its breath. "Where do we start?" Dr. Patel asked, her clinical detachment wavering in the face of the carnival's eerie atmosphere. Before anyone could answer, a voice rang out, seemingly from everywhere at once. "Welcome, dear visitors, to the Midnight Carnival." They spun around, searching for the source of the voice, but saw no one. The voice continued, smooth and alluring. "We're so pleased you've decided to join us. The show is about to begin, and we have such sights to show you." With a sudden jarring crescendo, the carnival burst into life. Lights blazed forth from every attraction, and the calliope music that had lured Hannah the night before filled the air. The group huddled closer together, overwhelmed by the sensory assault. "Come now, don't be shy," the voice cajoled. "There's so much to see, so much to experience. Why don't you split up? You'll cover more ground that way." Sheriff Holbrook's hand went to his gun. "Not a chance," he growled. "We're staying together." A low chuckle echoed around them. "Oh, my dear Sheriff, what makes you think you have a choice?" The ground beneath their feet began to shift and buckle. Before they could react, it split apart, separating the group. Tommy and Dr. Patel were swept towards a crooked funhouse, its mirrors reflecting impossible angles. Sarah found herself pulled towards a twisted version of a tunnel of love, where the boats were shaped like coffins. Arthur Blackwood was drawn inexorably towards a fortune-teller's tent, its flap opening invitingly. Sheriff Holbrook managed to grab onto a nearby pole, fighting against the carnival's pull. "Stay together," he shouted, but his words were drowned out by the ever-louder music. In moments, the group was scattered, each member drawn into a different part of the carnival's twisted landscape. Tommy Jensen stumbled into the funhouse, his young mind reeling from the sudden separation from the others. The entrance snapped shut behind him, plunging him into near darkness, broken only by feeble, flickering lights. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing strangely. "Dr. Patel, are you here?" There was no response save for the distant, muffled sound of the carnival's music. Tommy took a hesitant step forward, then another. The floor beneath him shifted unpredictably, forcing him to grab onto the walls for balance. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he realized that the walls were covered in mirrors. But these were no ordinary mirrors. Each one he passed showed a different reflection, sometimes older, sometimes younger, sometimes not human at all. One mirror caught his attention. In it he saw himself as a grown man, strong and confident. The reflection smiled at him, beckoning. Without thinking, Tommy reached out to touch the mirror's surface. His hand passed through as if the glass were water. He felt a pull, gentle but insistent, urging him to step through. It would be so easy, a voice in his head whispered. You could skip all the hard parts of growing up. You could be strong now, respected now. Tommy hesitated, his hand still through the mirror. Then with a supreme effort of will, he yanked it back. No, he said aloud, his voice shaking but determined. That's not real. I have to find the others. He turned away from the mirror only to find himself face to face with Dr. Patel. But something was wrong. Her eyes were too wide, her smile too fixed. Come on, Tommy, she said, her voice distorted as if coming from far away. Let's explore together. There's so much to see. Tommy backed away, his heart pounding. This wasn't the real Dr. Patel, it couldn't be. Stay away from me, he warned. The thing wearing Dr. Patel's face tilted its head at an impossible angle. Don't you want to have fun, Tommy? Don't you want to stay and play with us forever? Tommy turned and ran, no longer caring about the shifting floor or the dizzying reflections. He had to find a way out, had to find the real Dr. Patel and the others. Behind him, he could hear the thing laughing, its voice mixing with the carnival's ever-present music. Sarah Loomis found herself in a twisted parody of a tunnel of love. The water was black and still, reflecting nothing. The coffin-shaped boats bobbed gently, inviting her to step aboard. Hannah, she called out, her voice swallowed by the oppressive silence. Hannah, are you here? A figure stepped out of the shadows. Hannah, looking just as she had the last time Sarah had seen her. But there was something off about her smile, something not quite right in her eyes. Sarah, Hannah said, her voice eerily calm. I'm so glad you're here. Come on, let's take a ride. There's so much I want to show you. Sarah hesitated. Everything in her screamed that this was wrong, that this couldn't be her friend. But oh, how she wanted it to be true. Hannah, what happened to you? What is this place? Hannah's smile widened, showing too many teeth. It's wonderful here, Sarah. Time doesn't matter. Pain doesn't matter. We can be together forever, just like we always wanted. She held out her hand, and Sarah found herself reaching for it, drawn by a longing she couldn't quite name. Their fingers were just about to touch when a scream echoed from somewhere in the carnival. Breaking the spell, Sarah jerked her hand back. You're not Hannah, she said, her voice shaking. What have you done with her? The thing wearing Hannah's face laughed, the sound bubbling up from its throat like dark water. Clever girl. But it doesn't matter. You'll join us soon enough. You'll all join us. It lunged for her, its form shifting and twisting into something inhuman. Sarah turned and ran, her feet pounding on the wooden walkway. She had to find the real Hannah, had to find the others. And somehow, they had to escape this nightmare. Arthur Blackwood stood in the fortune-teller's tent, surrounded by floating crystal balls and swirling mists. Before him sat a figure shrouded in veils, its hands moving over a deck of tarot cards. Sit, the figure said, its voice neither male nor female. Let us see what the future holds for you, Arthur Blackwood. Arthur remained standing, his hands clenched at his sides. Where is my sister? He demanded. I know she disappeared here all those years ago. What did you do to her? The fortune-teller laughed softly. Your sister? Oh, Arthur, she's been here all along. Would you like to see her? Before Arthur could respond, one of the crystal balls floated closer. Within its depths, he saw a familiar face. His sister, just as young as the day she had vanished. She smiled at him, reaching out as if to touch the glass. Emily, Arthur whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry. I should have found you sooner. The image of his sister shook her head, still smiling. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear. Arthur leaned closer, straining to understand. She's happy here, the fortune-teller said. They all are. Free from the ravages of time, free from the pain of the outside world. You could join her, Arthur. You could be young again, be with your sister forever. Arthur's hand reached out, almost of its own accord, towards the crystal ball. It would be so easy to give in, to let go of all the years of guilt and regret. But as his fingers brushed the cool surface of the ball, he hesitated. This wasn't right. This wasn't natural. "No," he said, his voice growing stronger. "This isn't real. My sister is gone, and this is just an illusion." The fortune-teller's laugh turned cold. "Oh, Arthur, it's all real. More real than you can possibly imagine. And now that you're here, you'll never leave." The mists in the tent began to thicken, swirling around Arthur's feet. He felt a pull, as if the very air was trying to draw him in. With a cry of defiance, he turned and burst out of the tent, running blindly into the carnival beyond. Sheriff Mac Holbrook had managed to resist the carnival's initial attempt to separate them, but now he found himself lost in a maze of mirrors. Every turn brought him face to face with another reflection, each one subtly wrong. Here he saw himself as a young deputy, full of idealism and hope. There he was an old man, bitter and corrupt. Another mirror showed him in a carnival barker's outfit, inviting others to enter this twisted wonderland. "This isn't real," he muttered to himself, trying to focus on finding a way out. "It's all smoke and mirrors. There has to be an explanation." "Oh, but it is real, Sheriff," a voice said from behind him. Mac spun around to find himself face to face with the Ringmaster. The tall, gaunt figure smiled, revealing teeth that were just a bit too sharp. "As real as anything in this world, perhaps more so." Mac's hand went to his gun, but he found the holster empty. The Ringmaster's smile widened. "Looking for this?" he asked, holding up Mac's revolver. "I'm afraid weapons aren't allowed in the carnival. We wouldn't want anyone to get hurt now, would we?" "What are you?" Mac demanded, fighting to keep his voice steady. "What have you done with the others?" The Ringmaster spread his arms wide, his coat spreading like wings. "I am the master of ceremonies, the keeper of dreams and nightmares. As for your friends, they're enjoying the carnival, just as you will." He stepped closer and Mac found himself unable to move. "You've spent your life upholding the law, haven't you, Sheriff? Always bound by rules and regulations. But here, there are no laws save those of wonder and imagination. Here, you can be free." Mac felt a pull, an almost overwhelming urge to give in, to let go of responsibility, of duty, of the weight of all the years. But the thought of the others, of young Tommy, of Hannah's worried friend, of all those who had vanished before, gave him strength. "No," he said, forcing each word out. "I won't abandon them. I won't abandon my duty." The Ringmaster's eyes flashed with anger, then cooled to amusement. "Noble sentiments, Sheriff, but ultimately futile. The show must go on, and you're all part of it now." With a wave of his hand, the mirrors around them began to spin, faster and faster until they were a blur. Mac felt himself growing dizzy, losing his sense of direction and balance. "Round and round we go," the Ringmaster's voice echoed from every direction. "Where we stop, nobody knows." Mac stumbled, fell, and found himself tumbling through darkness. The last thing he heard before consciousness fled was the Ringmaster's laughter, mixing with the never-ending music of the Midnight Carnival. As night fell once again over Haverbrook, the Midnight Carnival blazed with unholy light. Within its twisting paths and impossible attractions, 5 souls struggled against its dark allure. And somewhere, in the heart of it all, Hannah Reeve waited, trapped between reality and nightmare. The carnival's music played on, a siren song calling to all who could hear it. The show, as always, must go on. And the Midnight Carnival was far from finished with Haverbrook. The Midnight Carnival pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its attractions spinning and whirling in a frenzied dance. At its center, in a tent larger and more ornate than all the others, the Ringmaster sat upon a throne of twisted metal and faded velvet. His eyes, glowing with an inner fire, surveyed the chaos around him with cruel satisfaction. "The hour grows late," he mused, his voice carrying to every corner of the carnival. "Soon the boundary between worlds will be at its thinnest, and then—" He smiled, revealing teeth sharp as razors. "Then the real show begins." Throughout the carnival, the trapped souls of Haverbrook fought against the illusions and temptations that assailed them from all sides. Each step was a battle, each moment a struggle against the growing urge to give in, to become a part of this eternal spectacle. Dr. Elena Patel stumbled through the Hall of Wonders, her scientific mind reeling at the impossible sights that surrounded her. Bubbles of reality floated past, each containing a different world, a different possibility. In one, she saw herself accepting the Nobel Prize. In another, she was exploring the depths of an alien ocean. "Remarkable, isn't it?" a voice said beside her. She turned to see a figure that looked almost like her, but older, wiser, with eyes that held the knowledge of countless universes. All of time and space, right at your fingertips. You could learn the secrets of the cosmos, Elena. All you have to do is stay. Elena felt the pull of curiosity, the burning desire to know and understand that had driven her all her life. But then she remembered Tommy, lost and alone in this nightmare. She remembered her oath as a doctor, to do no harm and to help those in need. "No," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Knowledge means nothing if it comes at the cost of others. I won't abandon them." The other Elena's face twisted in anger, its form shifting and bulging grotesquely. "Fool!" it snarled, lunging for her with clawed hands. Elena ducked and ran, her heart pounding. As she fled, she caught glimpses of other worlds in the bubbles around her, and in one, just for a moment, she thought she saw Hannah, reaching out as if calling for help. Tommy Jensen huddled in a corner of the funhouse, his young mind struggling to process the horrors he had witnessed. The mirrors around him reflected not just distorted images of himself, but glimpses into other times, other places. He saw Haverbrook as it had been decades ago, saw it as it might be in a future ravaged by some unthinkable disaster. "It's too much," he whimpered, covering his eyes. "I want to go home." "But you are home, Tommy," a voice said. He looked up to see a reflection of himself as an old man, wise and kind. "This is where you belong, where you've always belonged." Tommy felt a wave of longing wash over him. To be grown up, to be strong and smart and not afraid anymore. It would be so easy to step through that mirror, to embrace that future. But then he remembered the real adults, Dr. Patel, Sheriff Holbrook, the others. They were counting on him. They needed him to be brave. "No," he said, standing up straight. "This isn't real, and I'm not staying here." The reflection's face contorted with rage, the mirror cracking and splintering. Tommy turned and ran, ducking under grasping hands that emerged from the other mirrors. He had to find the others. Had to find a way out. Sarah Loomis fought her way through the tunnel of love, now transformed into a nightmarish landscape of twisted memories and broken dreams. Every turn brought her face to face with another moment from her past, another regret or missed opportunity. "Sarah," Hannah's voice called from the shadows. "Why did you leave me? Why didn't you come sooner?" "You're not real," Sarah muttered, pressing forward. "The real Hannah wouldn't blame me. The real Hannah is still in here somewhere, and I'm going to find her." A figure stepped out in front of her, Hannah as she had been when they were children, innocent and full of life. "But I am real, Sarah. More real than anything out there. Stay with me. We can be young forever, best friends for all eternity." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. How many times had she wished she could go back, could relive those carefree days? But she shook her head, brushing the tears away. "No. We grew up, Hannah. And that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be." The young Hannah's face crumpled, then reformed into something ancient and malevolent. It lunged for Sarah, who ducked and rolled, coming up running. She wouldn't give up. She couldn't. The real Hannah was counting on her. Arthur Blackwood wandered through a sea of memories, each one a perfect recreation of a moment from Haverbrook's past. He saw the town as it had been in his youth, saw faces long dead and buildings long demolished. "You remember, don't you, Arthur?" His sister's voice whispered in his ear. "How things used to be, how they could be again." "Emily," he murmured, his heart aching. "Oh, Emily, I've missed you so much." She appeared before him, just as young and beautiful as the day she had vanished. "I'm here, Arthur. I've always been here. Stay with me. We can relive the past, make new memories, be together forever." Arthur reached out, his fingers almost brushing hers. Then he paused, a lifetime of historical study reasserting itself. "No," he said softly. "The past is gone, Emily. And you're gone too. This isn't real." Emily's face twisted in fury, her form elongating and distorting. "You could have had everything," she shrieked, her voice no longer human. "Now you'll have nothing." Arthur turned and fled, tears streaming down his face. He had to find the others, had to warn them. The carnival wasn't just some supernatural sideshow. It was something far older, far more dangerous. Sheriff Mac Holbrook fought his way through an ever-shifting maze, the walls moving and reshaping themselves with each step. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with sweat and grime, but his eyes burned with determination. "You can't win, Sheriff," the ringmaster's voice echoed around him. "The carnival always gets what it wants, always." "Maybe," Mac grunted, shouldering his way through a suddenly solid-seeming wall. "But I'm not done fighting yet." He stumbled into a circular room and found himself face to face with the ringmaster. The gaunt figure smiled, spreading his arms wide. "Welcome, Sheriff, to the heart of the carnival. I must say, I'm impressed by your tenacity. It's been a long time since we had such spirited guests." Mac's hand went to his hip, forgetting for a moment that his gun was gone. "What are you? What is this place?" The ringmaster's smile widened, revealing too many teeth. "We are the collectors of souls, the keepers of dreams and nightmares. We are eternal, Sheriff. We are legion, and soon we will be unstoppable." He gestured to a large, ornate clock that dominated one wall of the room. Its hands spun wildly, blurring into a solid circle. "The witching hour approaches. When the clock strikes 12, the barrier between worlds will fall. And then, oh then, the real show begins." Mac felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" The ringmaster laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. "This little town of yours, it sits on a nexus of realities. With the right catalyst, say the souls of a few unwary visitors, we can tear open the veil. And then the carnival will spread, consuming your world, and countless others." "Not if I stop you," Mac growled, launching himself at the ringmaster. But his fist passed through empty air. The ringmaster reappeared behind him, still laughing. "Oh, Sheriff, don't you see? You can't stop us, you're already part of the show." As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the 5 lost souls of Haverbrook found themselves drawn inexorably towards the center of the carnival. They stumbled into the ringmaster's tent, battered and weary, but unbroken. Our guests of honor arrive," the ringmaster said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "And just in time for the grand finale." They looked around wildly, taking in the impossible space. The tent seemed to contain an entire world, with the twisted attractions of the carnival spiraling out in all directions. And there, suspended in a cage of light and shadow, was Hannah. "Hannah!" Sarah cried, starting forward, but an invisible force held her back. The ringmaster stepped forward, his form seeming to grow and shift. "You've all played your parts admirably. Your struggles, your fears, your hopes, all have fed the carnival, made it stronger. And now, with the strike of 12, your world will be ours." The great clock began to chime, each boom shaking the very fabric of reality. The ringmaster raised his arms, his voice rising in an eldritch chant. The air around them began to warp and twist, reality itself seeming to unravel. But then, something unexpected happened. Tommy, the youngest and in many ways the most vulnerable, stepped forward. "No," he said, his voice somehow carrying over the din. "This isn't right. This isn't how the story's supposed to go." The ringmaster paused, looking down at the boy with a mixture of amusement and annoyance. "And what would you know of how the story goes, child?" Tommy stood straighter, his eyes blazing with a light of their own. "I know that in stories the monsters don't win. I know that friends stick together no matter what. And I know that there's always hope, even in the darkest night." As he spoke, something began to change. The others felt a warmth spreading through them, burning away the fear and despair that had clouded their minds. Dr. Patel stepped forward, placing a hand on Tommy's shoulder. "He's right. We're stronger together, and we're not giving up." One by one, they joined hands, forming a circle. The ringmaster's smile faded, replaced by a look of uncertainty. "What is this? What are you doing?" "Something you wouldn't understand," Sarah said, her voice strong and clear. "We're believing in each other, in hope, in the power of the human spirit." A light began to emanate from their joined hands, growing brighter with each passing second. The carnival around them began to waver, its illusions flickering and fading. "No!" the ringmaster howled, his form losing cohesion. "This isn't possible. The show must go on." "The show's over," Max said grimly. "Time to face the final curtain." With a sound like reality itself tearing, the light exploded outward. The carnival's attractions began to crumble, fading away like mist in the morning sun. The souls trapped within were freed, streaming away towards whatever afterlife awaited them. The ringmaster let out a final inhuman shriek as his form dissolved, taking the last remnants of the carnival with him. And then, suddenly, it was over. The group found themselves standing in Farley's field, the morning sun peeking over the horizon. Of the Midnight Carnival, there was no sign save for a lingering scent of popcorn and cotton candy on the breeze. Hannah stirred, blinking as if waking from a long sleep. What happened?" she murmured. Sarah rushed to her friend's side, tears of joy streaming down her face. "It's over, Hannah. We're home. We're safe." As the group huddled together, comforting each other and marveling at their narrow escape, they knew that life in Haverbrook would never be quite the same. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, forever changed by their encounter with the Midnight Carnival. But even as relief washed over them, a chill wind blew across the field. And for just a moment they thought they heard the faint distant sound of calliope music on the breeze. A reminder, perhaps, that some stories never truly end, and that the boundary between reality and nightmare is thinner than we dare to believe. In the years to come, the people of Haverbrook would tell the tale of the Midnight Carnival, a story of terror and wonder, of loss and redemption, a reminder to cherish each moment, to hold loved ones close, and to never underestimate the power of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable horror. And sometimes, on dark and lonely nights when the moon is high and the wind whispers secrets, the people of Haverbrook swear they can still hear the faint echoes of the carnival's music, calling out across time and space. A promise, or perhaps a warning, that somewhere, somewhen the show must go on.